the best lockup. You know, people always ask, like, what's the knife that has the best lockup? We're just talking frame locks, though. You guys know I've done lots of videos on frame locks, and I can say, you know, every knife maker, they have their theories, their methods, and it is individual to that knife company and that knife. So what we see here, though, is a small handful, 4 knives, that I've had a chance to now mess with and experience. Both trying to push them beyond what a folder should do, and also just using them in general life. And I can kind of give you an insight as to which one is the best, or some of the ideas behind them, and perhaps some of the ideas that perhaps YouTubers and people in the knife community are misinformed on. You know, to start off, let's start with Warren Thomas's idea on this. And this one, I think, is perhaps the most missed idea. Mr. Thomas, he says he likes his lockups to be about 50% in. In fact, he likes his set, his preferred, when he aims for actually, is usually to have about the entire lock bar sit behind the blade tang. Now, for most people, when they see that kind of gap right there, and that, you know, that steep bar, that bar going really far in, they're going to be kind of concerned, because in the knife community, most of the time we look for early lockup. And even I myself in my videos have talked about, you know, hey, you want an early lockup with a strider, right? But that is because a strider lockup, you know, when it wears in, if it wears in too far, has problems. You know, and on most knives, that's what you're going to perhaps happen and see. So you just want it to last. And in the same way, I want Warren Thomas to last too. But the concept here is this. Mr. Thomas had said, okay? And again, I'm just restating this, and if I say anything incorrect, maybe perhaps I just, you know, said it incorrectly when I passed the information on to you guys, you know. But the way I interpreted it is, if the more of a lock bar, the more surface of the lock bar that's contacting the blade tang, the more secure of a lockup you have. I mean, that's quite simple. I mean, if the whole lock bar, all of it, is touching the blade tang, then you have more contact area, more actual surface area of a lock bar supporting the blade tang and keeping it locked. So, I mean, that is why he prefers that. Now, so in reality, he's right. That makes total sense. In a knife that locks up, you know, 50% and has the entire lock bar touch the blade tang is going to be a more solid lockup. Especially with the consideration that if the angle is very steep, it's not going to pop out, it's going to go inward. So I mean, you have a really strong lockup with this. Now, of course, what could happen, like on a Sebenza, you know, where Sebenza has pretty much not all the lock bar will sit behind the blade tang, but all of the surface that you see there is contacting the blade tang, except for the newer ones where you adjust it a little bit. You know, you would think, okay, well then that's going to be the most solid lockup, except, you know, you have to then look at how that blade tang touches that lock bar, which we've talked about. What I'm going to show you here, you guys can see in other videos when I take them apart and show you how the lock bar looks after being spine whacked and damaged. But here's kind of more discussion on how, like, then that lockup, you know, how that blade meets that blade tang and how it affects things. And it is pretty much just common sense. You know, it's pretty common sense. I mean, here's a Sebenza. You know, the blade tang doesn't, you know, it starts contacting the lock bar back here, right? You see there's some parts protruding out. And it contacted before this entire portion right here on this side. And here's the inside of the knife, the space between the two handles. So of course, like this, it's pushing down on this side, it's going to move that way. I mean, if the blade's closing down on it, and it's closing down, pushing pressure on that corner, and that corner is starting to slant, you know, kind of like this because it's wearing out, you know, it's starting to you know, basically become a slope from all that constant, you know, going like this. And of course, when it pushes down on that slope, you know, you're going to have a simple, you know, action of this happening. I mean, it's just simple. It's going to push it out that way. On Strider, you've seen this too in videos, and I have a picture on my website, and I'll probably upload more pictures of all this. You know, it's hitting that corner. You know, that corner used to be straight, but because Strider makes their lock bar, their lock bevel and their blade tang so quickly curved around and down like that, you can see it'll quickly wear that corner to when that corner becomes basically a, basically this shape. If it was straight and now it suddenly dips down right there on that corner and goes down, and wears just that corner. But it won't catch on the blade's lock bevel, which is shaped like that around here. But once it's worn in, right, but it will hit there and it'll push down that corner. And of course, if it's pushing down that corner, all these lock bars, they still have a middle point. I mean, if you think about it, they still have a center point. They still are beams. They are still like as if you were taking a flat object and pushing on a board on one side or one corner, tilting it in certain directions. I mean, if this was a beam, basically, and you push down this corner, it's going to push down this corner and make this corner stick up in this essence and go out. So it's going to go out that way. And then that's why they move inward, which causes them to kind of pinch because of that lock bar stabilizer. This blade hits down on it, hits down on that corner, pushes it inward and diagonally backward into the handle, and it gets kind of pinned. Now these are my beliefs on this, and through my testing and what I've seen. Hinder, same idea as a Strider, except Hinder is a larger portion, and it's a much larger, thicker lock bar. I mean, here we have right now these two, and this is the SMF, and this is just the XM18 3.5 inch. But the titanium is already like slightly thicker by 1 millimeter than the titanium of the SMF. So I mean, the contact portion, plus you can see Hinder doesn't make that extreme diagonal slope on his lock bevel. So right off the bat, what Hinder is doing, he's not creating this situation. And Hinder is avoiding that situation occurring right there on that corner, because his lock bevel is a little bit more straight across. Okay. Second, then, it's also contacting a larger area, so that's why it lasts. When it takes the impacts, it just flattens that area that's already flat, rather than the Strider quickly taking that straight brand new lock bar and suddenly flattening out this corner right here and making it a slant, a slope, which I've seen happen through my testing. So, and again, pushing on this, it's going to push just like the Strider that way into the lock bar stabilizer, and it works. Now Warren Thomas's knife, Mr. Thomas's design is very interesting. If you look at this, now this is on my second Warren Thomas Ryu, so this could just be the Ryu model, but look at where the discoloration, the polish, the silver polish is occurring on the lock bevel. And if you notice, you see it, it's not actually straight down. Like, let's see, the lock bar is contacting more up here than it is down here. It actually, for example, it should go, you should see silver around here too, where my pen is touching, but you don't. You see it only over here, and it moved diagonally across up here. And so basically, more of the lock bar is contacting deeper into the blade lock bevel up here than it is down here. So what happens is, if you understand that, then when you open this, basically that corner now of this lock bar is touching only here, not touching over here, which you can see. The lock bevel corner up here is touching the lock bar around this area, but not over here. You can see there's a gap there. Okay, and that basically would obviously create the effect then of pushing it down this way. I mean, if it's past that lock bar, if here's that corner, it would push it this way inward. You can see it. I mean, it's past the halfway point. It's all the way over here on the lock bar. It's going to push the lock bar in that way. But then as it goes towards the back, it goes back around this way. Because remember, if this is the inside of the knife, the lock bar of the Warren Thomas knife, it touches deeper into the blade tang as it gets further back towards this direction. Let's see. Because you can see it right there, it's wearing out more deeper here. It's further this way, back in. So when it pushes on it, it actually pushes on it in a diagonal. It makes this front area go this way, and it makes this back area push diagonally out that way. So it actually twists the lock bar in essence to keep it, instead of doing what the other knives do. If this knife pushed it diagonally into something, and so did this one, and this one just pushes it straight out like a Sebenza, the Warren Thomas knife pushes basically in a spiral effect straight down into it at a diagonal like a cross. I mean, it makes this area go inward up here, and it makes the back area go out back into the handle and come out. So it's a very interesting lockup. Long story short, basically you can see each one is specific to the knife maker, but when you pay for Hinder and you pay for Warren Thomas, you know, you look at the type of lockups you're getting, the complexity perhaps, the considerations, you know, the Hinder giving you kind of a middle ground between a Sebenza and its ability to last because of a larger contact area and the way that the lock bevel is shaped, you know, and to the Warren Thomas, which with that really different type of lockup. I mean, and then you have this Strider here, you know, with its flaws, and Sebenza with its perhaps ability to last, but it's, you know, perhaps not how you say, designed to stay locked up in like maybe a harder use situation. So each one has its purpose. This is great for lasting. This is not as good. You see what I'm saying? That's why I don't think it's that good anymore. This is better than this, although this of course will never jam as easily as this. But Hinder doesn't. He's no slouch still. I mean, his knife is still pretty, you know, resistant to that effect. You know, it's like a fine middle ground between these two right here. So I mean, if people wanted a Sebenza more like a Strider, or a Strider more like a Sebenza, the answer is a Hinder. That's the best one. And then it's still superior in terms of heavy duty use compared to the Warren Thomas. You know, but the Warren Thomas knife is like not going to fail. It's really solid lockup. I mean, that's something people can attest to. Just ask someone who owns it. Now on the Striders, of course, you know, the lockup, yeah, you want an early lockup on a Strider because, you know, that bevel is so curved and so sloped down over on this side. It comes down so fast that, yeah, if your lock bar goes too far towards that slope, next thing you know, it's not gonna catch on anything. It's gonna slide right off the slope until it contacts the flat portion. And that's why you'll see a lot of Striders, they'll, when you move them, they'll have up and down play once they're beat up. I mean, even this one has, you know, you can move the lock bar because it's just a point touching it. It's just one corner touching that lock bevel. The design is a corner on the lock bar touching the blade tang, and that small little portion right there, which Strider now put graphite on it, so, you know, they watch my vids. And you can see it's, once that corner wears out, because it's just a small corner, of course, you see it's not even touching back here, it's only touching up here. So of course, you know, a little corner up in the front, it's going to wear out, which I have pictures of this on my site. It's going to wear out quicker. So it's not a lockup that lasts. Now it is a lockup that, because of that sharp curve, you go watch that final word on Strider lockups, it's not going to jam on you, it's never going to go too far inward, but it just can't secure. So eventually you end up with sort of a not very solid lockup. Frame lock wise, Hinder is the best of all worlds, I guess you could say. In terms of heavy duty and at the same time lasting, like a Sebenza, Hinder wins. I mean, Hinder, if you go watch my testing, and I remember this, and I'll never forget, is that, you know, I could beat on this knife, abuse it in a way that you shouldn't be used, and basically treat it as if it was a fixed blade. And the lock bar didn't wear in. It didn't get damaged. Like on a Strider, in all my testings, you know, when you beat on it hard, you're going to quickly roll or flatten or shave off that corner that's contacting, and it's going to break in all the way, you know, because it's just that corner. I mean, you can see it. It's just a little corner touching. It's a flat corner on that lock bar, and once that corner gets an impact, you know, from spine whacking or batoning or prying, just too much force going on it, it's going to turn into a little rounded off corner, and it's going to shoot that inward. The Hinder, because it's still flat, it doesn't. Like I said, Mr. Hinder, he had designed it to where when the pivot's loosened, or basically he's saying when there is movement, which there always is, because I mean it's a folder, the lock bar is more likely to go inward. But he still has it set at an angle where it's resistant enough to where it doesn't go inward, you know, easily. Like it still wears normally like a Sebenza. It's a larger portion contacting the blade tang, and it just keeps wearing in slowly over time. The lockup lasts a really long time. Plus, I mean, if you actually look at it, you have this entire lock bar, which is thick, of a hinder lock bar to wear out through. I mean, look, even on my worn-in one that engages the lock bar at 50%, it's still only covering, you know, roughly 50% of the actual bar itself. So I mean, you're going to have with the hinder the longest lasting one. And with my testing, if you guys remember this knife, it didn't change the lockup. It didn't damage the lock bar surface. It didn't, you know, remove a corner immediately off. It stayed. The hinder lockup is the strongest. It has two contact portions back here for the stopping compared to the one on the Strider. It is stronger than a Warren Thomas lock. I mean, it is a stronger knife in terms of overall build than a Warren Thomas knife. And these are two different knives. The Warren Thomas knife is like a lightweight, like perhaps like a Corvette or something, you know, with all the aluminum and carbon fiber parts. So it's very lightweight, but then of course it's not as perhaps strong. But if you were to hold it, then you'd be amazed at how strong it is. It's still stronger than the Strider. I mean, that's the crazy part. This Warren Thomas knife is nothing but solid, and it's amazing to get that sort of a level of I say solid feeling out of a knife that's meant for kind of a different class of category, a different type of knife category if we're talking about lightweight. So in terms of best lockup, the hinder lockup is by far the best. His lock design is one of the best. One of the best. I mean, it's hard to beat. I mean, a Trezula failsafe liner is great, and you know, there are different people who make different lockups. Mr. Thomas's methods are pretty darn great too. It's just not the same category. It's not the same style. This is a lightweight tactical EDC folder, and this is like a heavy duty, you know, heavyweight tactical hard use folder. So I mean, but these two lockups are superior in quality, in craftsmanship, in concept, overall period, than a Strider one, in my opinion. Handling them all now, using them, these two are going to last you a longer, long time compared to this. And they're going to outperform this in both categories, even though this one is not made for this type of category that these two are in.